The soldier's boots crunched against the alien soil, a strange mixture of soft moss and crystalline shards that shimmered faintly under the twin suns. He was lost, completely, utterly lost. His platoon had been ambushed by an unknown enemy during their reconnaissance mission on this uncharted planet, and now he found himself wandering through what could only be described as a forest straight out of a dream. The trees were tall and willowy, their translucent leaves glowing with hues of lavender and gold. Between them grew flowers unlike anything he'd ever seen. Massive blooms that floated slightly above the ground, pulsating gently like living hearts. Captain Ethan Rain paused for a moment to catch his breath. His armor was dented, his uniform torn in places, but he still managed to look every bit the rugged human soldier. His dark hair stuck to his forehead from sweat, and his green eyes darted around cautiously, searching for any sign of danger or rescue. But there was no one, just him and the eerie beauty of this alien world. As he leaned against one of the glowing trees, trying to gather his thoughts, something caught his eye. A figure moved gracefully between the floating flowers, her silhouette ethereal and otherworldly. At first, Ethan thought it might be some kind of mirage or hallucination brought on by exhaustion. But as she stepped closer, he realized she was real and breathtaking. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her skin a radiant shade of opalescent silver that seemed to shimmer with each step she took. Her hair cascaded down her back in waves of liquid platinum, catching the light of the twin suns and scattering rainbows across the clearing. She wore a flowing gown made of what appeared to be woven starlight, its fabric shifting colors with her every movement. And her eyes, they glowed softly, a deep violet that seemed to pierce right through him, reading his soul. Ethan swallowed hard, unsure if he should reach for his weapon or simply gawk at the vision before him. Before he could decide, she spoke. Her voice was melodic, almost musical, yet carried an authority that demanded respect. "You are not from here," she said, tilting her head slightly as though studying a curious insect. "Your presence disrupts the harmony of my domain." Her words startled him, but not as much as the fact that she spoke perfect English, or at least something indistinguishable from it. He straightened up, instinctively snapping into military posture despite his disheveled appearance. "I'm Captain Ethan Rain of the United Earth Forces," he replied, injecting as much confidence into his voice as possible. "We came here to explore, not to cause trouble." She raised an eyebrow, or at least what passed for an eyebrow on her flawless face, and let out a sound that might have been laughter. It tinkled like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Explore?" she echoed, stepping closer. "Is that what you call it when your machines tear apart the land and your weapons destroy life?" Ethan opened his mouth to defend himself but quickly closed it again. There was no denying the truth in her accusation. Humanity's track record with exploration often left destruction in its wake. Instead, he opted for honesty. "We didn't mean harm," he said quietly, "but we're imperfect. We make mistakes." For a long moment, she simply stared at him, her violet eyes unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled, a dazzling display of teeth so white they almost hurt to look at. "You are fascinating," she murmured, circling him slowly. "So fragile, yet capable of such boldness. Tell me, Captain Ethan Rain, do all humans possess such contradictions?" Ethan felt heat rise to his cheeks, though whether from embarrassment or something else entirely, he wasn't sure. This close, he could see tiny flecks of gold swirling in her irises, and the faint scent of blooming flowers surrounded her. He cleared his throat awkwardly. "Not all of us," he admitted. "Just the lucky ones." Her smile widened, and she stopped in front of him, tilting her head again. Up close, she was even more stunning than he'd initially thought. Every inch of her radiated grace and power, and Ethan couldn't help but feel completely outclassed. "You are more beautiful than those flowers," he blurted out before he could stop himself. The princess froze, her expression shifting from amusement to surprise. For a moment, Ethan feared he'd offended her, but then she began to laugh, a rich, joyful sound that filled the air like music. She covered her mouth delicately with one hand, her shoulders shaking with mirth. "No one has ever said such a thing to me," she said once she'd regained her composure. "Flirtatious and bold. You truly are an interesting specimen." Ethan grinned sheepishly, scratching the back of his neck. "Well, I figured if I'm going to get captured by an alien princess, I might as well go out with a bang." Her laughter faded into a warm chuckle, and she regarded him with renewed interest. "Captured? Oh no, Captain. You misunderstand. I am not here to imprison you. I am merely curious. Curious about what? Ethan asked warily. About you, she replied simply. About your kind. About why someone so small and fragile would dare venture so far from home. Before Ethan could respond, the ground beneath them trembled violently, sending both of them stumbling. The princess steadied herself effortlessly, while Ethan nearly toppled over. When the shaking subsided, she turned toward the source of the disturbance, her expression darkening. They've found you, she said grimly. Who? Ethan asked, gripping his rifle tightly. The ones who ambushed your platoon. They do not take kindly to intruders. She glanced back at him, her violet eyes sharp. Come with me if you wish to live. Without waiting for a response, she grabbed his wrist and pulled him after her, moving with incredible speed. Ethan struggled to keep up, his legs pumping furiously as they raced through the glowing forest. Behind them, the sound of crashing branches and guttural roars grew louder. Wait! Ethan shouted, trying to wrench his arm free. What about my team? Did you see them? She slowed just enough to glance over her shoulder, her grip firm but not painful. Your comrades scattered. Some may yet survive. But if you wish to save them, you must trust me. Trust her? Ethan barely knew her name, let alone anything about her intentions. Yet something in her gaze compelled him to nod. Whether it was desperation, admiration, or sheer stupidity, he couldn't say. As they ran, the landscape changed dramatically. The glowing forest gave way to a vast canyon carved into the earth, its walls glittering with veins of precious metals. At the bottom flowed a river of molten lava, casting an orange glow that illuminated their path. The princess led him to a narrow bridge made of interwoven vines and crystal strands, seemingly too delicate to support their weight. Cross quickly, she urged, pushing him forward. Ethan hesitated, peering over the edge. The drop was dizzying, and the heat rising from the lava made his skin prickle. But the sounds of pursuit were growing closer, and he didn't have time to second-guess himself. Taking a deep breath, he stepped onto the bridge. It swayed dangerously under his weight, creaking ominously, but held firm. Halfway across, however, disaster struck. One of the pursuing creatures, a hulking beast with jagged spines and glowing red eyes, lunged onto the bridge behind them, causing it to shake violently. Ethan stumbled, nearly losing his footing, but the princess grabbed him just in time. Hold on, she commanded, her voice steady despite the chaos. With a flick of her wrist, she unleashed a burst of energy that sent the creature tumbling backward. It roared in fury as it plummeted into the lava below, disappearing in a fiery splash. The bridge stabilized, and they continued their frantic escape. On the other side of the canyon lay a hidden cave, its entrance concealed by a curtain of cascading vines. The princess ushered Ethan inside, sealing the entrance behind them with another pulse of energy. Inside, the air was cool and damp, lit by bioluminescent fungi clinging to the walls. Rest here, she instructed, her tone softer now. They won't find us easily. Ethan collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath. His body ached from the exertion, and his mind reeled from everything that had happened. Despite the danger, he couldn't help but marvel at the woman standing before him. What's your name? He asked finally, looking up at her. She hesitated, as though weighing whether to answer. Finally, she said, I am Princess Lyra of the Valerii. Well, Princess Lyra, Ethan said with a tired grin, you sure know how to show a guy a good time. To his relief, she laughed. A genuine, heartfelt sound that echoed through the cave. In that moment, surrounded by danger and uncertainty, Ethan felt something stir within him, something he hadn't felt in a long time, hope. The hours passed in uneasy silence. Ethan sat cross-legged on the cold stone floor, nursing a shallow cut on his arm while Lyra paced restlessly near the entrance. Her earlier humor had faded, replaced by a tense vigilance that made him uneasy. So, Ethan said, breaking the quiet, what exactly are those things chasing us? Lyra stopped pacing and turned to face him, her violet eyes narrowing. They are called the Zorthan. Once they were peaceful beings, guardians of this planet. But corruption consumed them, twisting their forms and minds. Now they seek only destruction. And they attacked my platoon because you trespassed, she said bluntly. This world is sacred to the Valerii. To disturb it is to invite wrath. Ethan frowned, guilt gnawing at him. Look, I get it. We screwed up. But we didn't come here to invade or conquer. We just wanted to learn, to understand. Lyra studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, surprisingly, she knelt beside him, her movements graceful and deliberate. Up close, her beauty was almost overwhelming, and Ethan had to remind himself to breathe. "You speak with sincerity," she said softly, "and yet your actions betray your words. How can I believe you?" He met her gaze, searching for the right answer. "Because I'm here, risking my life to fix our mistakes. If I didn't care, I wouldn't have stayed behind to warn you about the Zorthan." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Perhaps there is truth in you after all." Before either of them could say more, the ground trembled again, harder this time. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and the bioluminescent fungi dimmed ominously. "They've found us," Lyra whispered, rising to her feet. "We must move." "Move where?" Ethan asked, scrambling up. "We're trapped." "Not entirely," she replied cryptically. Without further explanation, she pressed her hand against the cave wall, murmuring something in a language Ethan didn't recognize. To his astonishment, the rock began to shift, revealing a narrow tunnel leading downward. "After you," she said, gesturing for him to enter. Ethan hesitated, staring into the darkness. "You sure this isn't some elaborate trap? If I wanted you dead, Captain, you would already be so," she replied dryly. "Now hurry." Swallowing his doubts, Ethan stepped into the tunnel, Lyra close behind him. The passage twisted and turned, descending deeper into the planet's core. The air grew warmer, heavier, until it felt like breathing fire. Still, they pressed on, guided only by Lyra's glowing touch. Eventually, they emerged into a cavern unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, studded with crystals that refracted light into dazzling patterns. At the center of the chamber stood a massive tree, its trunk wide enough to house a small village. Its branches reached skyward, adorned with luminous orbs that pulsed rhythmically. "This is the heart of Valor," Lyra explained, her voice reverent. "The source of all life on this planet." "It's incredible," Ethan breathed, awestruck. "Yes," she agreed, "and perilously vulnerable. The Zorthans seek to destroy it, believing its power belongs to them." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we need to stop them." "We," Lyra echoed, raising an eyebrow. "You are but one man, Captain. What can you possibly do against such enemies?" "More than you think," he shot back, determination flaring in his eyes. "I didn't survive this long by giving up. Besides, I owe it to my team, to prove we're better than the monsters you think we are." Lyra regarded him silently, her expression softening. Finally, she nodded. "Very well. Together, then." Together they devised a plan. Using the natural defenses of the cavern, they set traps designed to slow the Zorthans' advance. Ethan contributed his tactical knowledge, while Lyra used her connection to the planet to manipulate the environment. It was a partnership born of necessity, but also of mutual respect. When the Zorthan arrived, the battle was fierce. Roars echoed through the cavern as the creatures charged, their claws scraping against the stone. Ethan fought valiantly, using every ounce of training ingrained in him. Beside him, Lyra wielded powers beyond comprehension, summoning bursts of energy and conjuring barriers of light. At one point, Ethan found himself cornered by two Zorthan warriors, their spiny tails lashing menacingly. Just as he braced for impact, Lyra appeared out of nowhere, unleashing a wave of force that sent the creatures sprawling. "Don't die on me yet, Captain," she teased, offering him a hand. "I'll try not to," he replied, grinning despite the chaos. Their teamwork proved effective, driving the Zorthan back temporarily. But the victory came at a cost. The heart of Valor began to destabilize, its orbs flickering erratically. Lyra's expression turned grave. "The heart cannot sustain this assault," she said urgently. "We must stabilize it, or the entire planet will perish." "How?" Ethan asked, panic creeping into his voice. "There is a ritual," she explained, "but it requires great sacrifice. One of us must channel the heart's energy directly, risking annihilation in the process." Ethan's heart sank. "No, absolutely not. There has to be another way." "There isn't," Lyra said firmly. "And it must be me. I am bound to this world. You are not." "Like hell you are," Ethan snapped, grabbing her arm. "You saved my life. I'm not letting you throw yours away." For a moment, they locked eyes, neither willing to yield. Then, unexpectedly, Lyra smiled. A bittersweet expression that tugged at Ethan's heart. "You truly are remarkable," she murmured. "Perhaps there is hope for your kind after all." Before he could respond, she kissed him. A fleeting, tender gesture that left him breathless. Then, with a final glance, she stepped toward the heart, her form beginning to glow. "Lyra, wait!" Ethan shouted, reaching for her. But it was too late. She merged with the heart, her essence becoming one with the pulsing light. The cavern shuddered violently as the orbs stabilized, their glow returning stronger than ever. Ethan fell to his knees, overwhelmed by grief and awe. Around him, the remaining Zorthan fled, sensing the shift in power. The planet was safe, but at what cost? As the dust settled, a soft voice echoed in his mind. "Do not mourn, Captain. My spirit lives on within you and this world. Use it wisely." Tears streamed down Ethan's face as he whispered, "I promise." Unknown to him, the adventure was far from over. Ethan sat alone in the cavern, the weight of Lyra's sacrifice pressing heavily on his chest. The heart of Valor pulsed steadily now, its light casting a warm glow over the chamber, but it felt hollow without her presence. He reached out to touch the ancient tree, half expecting to feel some trace of her essence, but all he felt was the rough bark beneath his fingertips. Still, her final words lingered in his mind like an unspoken promise. "My spirit lives on." The days that followed were a blur of survival and solitude. Ethan scavenged what he could from the remnants of the Zorthan attack, piecing together supplies as he navigated the alien terrain. Each step away from the heart of Valor felt heavier than the last, as though part of him was being left behind with every stride. Yet, despite everything, there was something strange about the way the world seemed to respond to him now. The floating flowers no longer drifted aimlessly. They turned toward him as if drawn by an invisible force. Even the glowing trees seemed to hum softly whenever he passed beneath their branches. At first, Ethan chalked it up to coincidence or his own grief-stricken imagination. But then, one night, as he rested under a canopy of translucent leaves, he heard her voice again, not just in his mind, but carried on the wind itself. "Ethan," it whispered, soft and melodic. "Do you still doubt me?" He bolted upright, heart pounding. "Lyra, is that you?" There was no physical form, no shimmering apparition before him. Instead, the air around him shimmered faintly, and the flowers nearby began to sway in rhythmic patterns, almost like they were dancing. It wasn't until he placed his hand against the nearest tree that he understood. Lyra's essence truly had merged with the planet. She was everywhere and nowhere all at once. "I don't know how this is possible," Ethan murmured, running a hand through his hair. "But I can feel you, and I can feel you," came her reply, warm and teasing. "You're more stubborn than I remember." Despite himself, Ethan chuckled. Well, someone has to keep things interesting around here. Their connection grew stronger with each passing day. Wherever Ethan went, Lyra accompanied him. Not as a separate entity, but as a guiding presence woven into the fabric of the planet itself. She warned him of dangers ahead, pointed out edible plants, and even helped him locate hidden water sources. In return, Ethan shared stories of Earth, of its beauty, its flaws, and the people who called it home. Slowly, their bond deepened, transcending the boundaries of life and death, human and alien. But peace never lasts long in the galaxy. One evening, as Ethan set up camp near a crystalline lake, the ground trembled violently. This time, it wasn't the Zorthan causing the disturbance. From the horizon emerged a fleet of sleek, metallic ships, their hulls gleaming ominously under the twin suns. They descended rapidly, kicking up clouds of iridescent dust as they landed. Before Ethan could react, dozens of armored figures poured out, their weapons trained on him. "Identify yourself," barked a gruff voice amplified by a helmet speaker. Ethan raised his hands slowly, recognizing the insignia on their uniforms. These weren't Zorthan, they were humans. Specifically, members of the United Earth Forces Elite Reconnaissance Division. Relief washed over him for a brief moment, until he realized the implications. The leader of the group stepped forward, removing his helmet to reveal a stern face framed by close-cropped gray hair. Colonel Marcus Hale, a man known for his ruthless efficiency and zero tolerance for failure. "Captain Rain," Hale said, his tone clipped, "we've been searching for survivors. You're the first we've found." Ethan swallowed hard, trying to mask his unease. "Colonel Hale, sir, Save your explanations, Hale interrupted, gesturing for his men to lower their weapons. Your platoon was ambushed, and communications were cut off. We assumed the worst. Now tell me, what happened here? For a split second, Ethan considered lying. How could he possibly explain Lyra? Or the fact that she'd sacrificed herself to save not only him but the entire planet. But before he could speak, the flowers surrounding them began to glow brighter, their movements erratic. Hale noticed immediately, his eyes narrowing. What is this? Some kind of defense mechanism. It's complicated, Ethan stammered. Before he could elaborate further, Lyra's voice echoed in his mind, urgent and insistent. They cannot stay, Ethan. Their technology disrupts the balance of this world. If they remain, they will destroy it. Ethan clenched his fists, torn between duty and loyalty. He couldn't betray Lyra, or the planet she'd given her life to protect, but neither could he outright defy his commanding officer. Hale crossed his arms, clearly growing impatient. Complicated, Captain? Try me. Ethan took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. Sir, this planet is unique. Its ecosystem is delicate, and any prolonged interference could have catastrophic consequences. Hale raised an eyebrow. And you know this how? A local guide showed me, Ethan replied, deciding partial truths were safer than outright lies. She saved my life. A local guide? Hale repeated skeptically. I see no signs of intelligent life here, just plants and rocks. She's not exactly corporeal anymore, Ethan admitted reluctantly. But she's still here, watching, protecting. The colonel stared at him for a long moment, then let out a sharp laugh. Are you telling me you've gone native, Captain? That some alien ghost is whispering sweet nothings in your ear? It's not like that, Ethan started, but Hale cut him off. Enough. Whether you're delusional or hiding something doesn't matter right now. What matters is that we retrieve whatever intel your team gathered before retreating. This mission isn't over yet. As Hale turned to issue orders to his squad, Ethan felt a surge of panic. If the UEF stayed much longer, they would inevitably destabilize the planet, and Lyra's sacrifice would be for nothing. That night, while the rest of the recon team set up a temporary base, Ethan snuck away to confer with Lyra. Sitting by the edge of the lake, he closed his eyes and focused on her presence. What do I do? He asked quietly. If I try to stop them, they'll arrest me or worse. But if I don't, everything you fought for will be ruined. Lyra's response was calm, though tinged with sadness. You must trust yourself, Ethan. Trust us. Together we can find a way. But how? He pressed. They won't leave without a fight. Then give them a reason to go, she suggested cryptically. Show them the truth of this place, the cost of their greed. The next morning, Ethan put Lyra's plan into motion. Under the guise of leading a scouting expedition, he guided a small team of soldiers deeper into the forest. As they ventured closer to the heart of Valor, the environment began to change dramatically. The air grew heavier, charged with static electricity. Strange whispers filled the air, and the glowing trees seemed to lean inward, forming an eerie tunnel. This place gives me the creeps, muttered one of the soldiers, clutching his rifle tightly. You're not wrong, Ethan agreed, though his focus remained sharp. Ahead, he spotted a cluster of bioluminescent fungi growing in unnatural patterns, a sign that Lyra was ready. Suddenly, the ground beneath them erupted in a burst of light, sending everyone sprawling. When the brightness faded, the soldiers found themselves surrounded by towering figures made entirely of energy. They weren't solid, but their forms crackled with power, their eyes burning with an otherworldly intensity. What the hell are those? Shouted another soldier, backing away nervously. They're guardians, Ethan explained, keeping his voice steady. Protectors of this world. If you harm this planet, they'll stop you. Permanently. The energy beings advanced slowly, their movements deliberate and menacing. Panic spread among the soldiers and several opened fire, but their bullets passed harmlessly through the ethereal figures. Hale arrived moments later, having heard the commotion. His expression darkened as he surveyed the scene. Rain, what is the meaning of this? It's a warning, sir, Ethan replied firmly. This planet doesn't belong to us. We can't control it, and we sure as hell can't exploit it. If we try, we'll pay the price. Hale's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Ethan feared he'd pushed too far. But then the colonel sighed, rubbing his temples. Damn it, Rain. You always did have a flair for drama. To Ethan's surprise, Hale ordered the retreat. The recon team packed up their equipment and boarded their ships, leaving the planet untouched, for now. As the vessels disappeared into the sky, Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him. You did it, Lyra's voice said, softer this time. Thank you, Ethan. But their victory was short-lived. Back aboard the flagship orbiting the planet, Colonel Hale reviewed the data collected during their brief stay. Among the files was a recording of Ethan's encounter with the energy beings whose resemblance to Lyra's description of the heart of Valor was unmistakable. Hale leaned back in his chair, a sly smile spreading across his face. So, Captain Rain thinks he can play hero, does he? Well, let's see how far that gets him. Meanwhile, on the surface, Ethan continued to explore the planet with Lyra's guidance. Though their connection remained strong, there was an underlying tension, one that neither of them could ignore. For all her wisdom and power, Lyra was bound to Valor, unable to leave. And Ethan, for all his determination, was still human, tied to a world millions of light-years away. One evening, as they sat together by the crystalline lake, Ethan voiced the question that had been haunting him. Lyra, is there any way for you to come back? To be free? Her laughter echoed gently in his mind. Free? I am as free as I need to be, Ethan. My purpose is tied to this world. Without it, I am nothing. But you deserve more than this, he insisted. You deserve to live, to experience joy and wonder without limits. Lyra hesitated, her presence flickering slightly. And what of you, Ethan? Would you leave your world behind for mine? The question hit him like a punch to the gut. He wanted to say yes, to declare that he would follow her anywhere. But the reality was far more complicated. Earth needed him just as Valor needed Lyra. Could he really abandon his responsibilities for love? Before he could answer, the sky above them lit up with streaks of red and gold. Dozens of ships descended once more, their engines roaring deafeningly. This time, however, they weren't alone. Hovering alongside them was a massive vessel bearing the insignia of the Galactic Coalition, an interstellar alliance known for its ruthless expansionist policies. Ethan's blood ran cold. Somehow, word of Valor's existence had spread beyond the UEF. And now, the galaxy's most formidable powers had come to claim it. We're out of time, Lyra whispered urgently. Ethan, you must choose. Stay and fight with me, or flee while you still can. Ethan stood, gripping his weapon tightly. There was no choice, really. Not for him. I'm not going anywhere, he said firmly. Not without you. Lyra's laughter returned, warmer and brighter than ever. Then let's show them what happens when they mess with a princess and her captain. Together, they prepared for the battle of their lives, knowing full well that the odds were stacked against them. But as long as they stood side by side, neither fear nor doubt could shake their resolve. The battle that followed was nothing short of legendary. Ethan and Lyra fought as one, their bond stronger than ever. The Galactic Coalition forces underestimated the planet's defenses, and more importantly, they underestimated the power of love and unity. With Lyra channeling the energy of the heart of Valor and Ethan leading a daring resistance, they managed to repel the invaders in a spectacular display of ingenuity, courage, and sheer willpower. When the dust settled, the coalition ships retreated into the stars, leaving behind only silence. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, peace reigned over Valor. The glowing trees shimmered brighter than before, as if celebrating their victory, and the floating flowers danced joyfully in the breeze. Ethan stood at the edge of the crystalline lake, his armor battered but his spirit unbroken. Behind him, Lyra materialized, not as a disembodied voice this time, but as a radiant figure made entirely of light. Her form flickered between ethereal and solid, her violet eyes filled with warmth. You did it, she said softly, stepping closer. We did it. Ethan smiled, reaching out to touch her hand. To his astonishment, he could feel her real and tangible. Lyra, you're here. You're really here. She nodded, her smile widening. The heart of Valor has granted me a gift. My connection to this world remains, but I am no longer bound solely to its essence. I can walk among the living once more, if I choose. Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes as he pulled her into an embrace. Then choose, he whispered fiercely. Choose me. Choose us. Her laughter echoed through the air, sweet and melodic. There is no choice to make, Ethan. My heart belongs to you, just as yours belongs to me. Their reunion was interrupted by a soft rustling sound. Turning, they saw several members of Ethan's original platoon emerging from the forest, battered but alive. They had survived the Zoran attack and regrouped after hearing about the defense of Valor. Their faces lit up with relief and awe when they saw Ethan, and even more so when they caught sight of Lyra. "Captain," one of them exclaimed, saluting awkwardly. "We thought you were dead." "I almost was," Ethan admitted, wrapping an arm around Lyra. "But this incredible woman saved my life, and all of ours." The soldiers stared at Lyra in stunned silence, unsure whether to bow or run for cover. She laughed gently, waving away their hesitation. "There's no need for fear. We are allies now, and perhaps friends." Over the following weeks, the survivors worked together to rebuild and establish a new kind of relationship between humans and Valerii. Under Lyra's guidance, they learned to live harmoniously with the planet, respecting its delicate balance instead of exploiting it. In return, Ethan shared stories of Earth's beauty and resilience, bridging the gap between two vastly different worlds. As the days turned into months, Ethan and Lyra's bond deepened further. It wasn't long before whispers of wedding plans began to circulate among the crew. When Ethan finally knelt before Lyra under the twin suns, presenting her with a ring forged from the crystalline shards of Valor, her radiant smile nearly blinded him. "Yes," she said simply, pulling him to his feet. 1,000 times yes. Their wedding ceremony was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Held beneath the ancient tree at the heart of Valor, it combined human traditions with Valerii rituals, blending cultures in a celebration of unity and hope. Flowers floated lazily overhead, their petals scattering rainbows across the crowd. Alien creatures gathered alongside humans, united in joy and reverence for the couple who had changed the fate of an entire planet. Colonel Hale himself attended, though not without some reluctance. As he watched Ethan and Lyra exchange vows, he couldn't help but mutter gruffly, "Never thought I'd see the day Rain tied himself down." But there was a hint of pride in his voice, and he raised his glass in a rare toast to the newlyweds. Life after the wedding was idyllic. Ethan and Lyra built a home near the crystalline lake, where they spent their days exploring the wonders of Valor and their nights gazing at the twin moons reflected on the water. True to Lyra's promise, she remained connected to the planet, ensuring its protection while embracing her role as both princess and wife. It wasn't long before their family began to grow. To everyone's delight, including their own, Lyra discovered that her newfound physical form allowed her to carry children. Their firstborn, a daughter named Lyra, inherited her mother's opalescent skin and luminous eyes, along with her father's adventurous spirit. Over the years, they welcomed 3 more children into their lives, each one a perfect blend of human and alien traits. Their home became a sanctuary not just for their family, but for anyone seeking refuge or understanding. Ethan often joked that they ran the galaxy's most unconventional bed and breakfast, hosting diplomats, scientists, and wanderers from across the stars. Through it all, Lyra remained a guiding force, teaching lessons of compassion, balance, and coexistence. One evening, as the family sat together around a bonfire, Ethan leaned back against Lyra, watching their children play with the glowing flowers. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I never imagined my life turning out like this, but I wouldn't trade it for anything." Lyra rested her head on his shoulder, her expression serene. "Fate has a way of surprising us, doesn't it? And yet, here we are, happy, whole, and surrounded by love." Ethan kissed her forehead, feeling contentment wash over him. Despite the challenges they'd faced, the battles fought, the sacrifices made, they had found something truly extraordinary, a future worth fighting for. And so, Captain Ethan Rain and Princess Lyra of the Valerii lived happily ever after, their story becoming a legend told across galaxies. Together, they proved that love knows no boundaries, not even those of species, planets, or dimensions.